Welcome back to the ShrikeCast. My name is Andrew Crouthamel, and today we are going to talk a bit about bandwidth management. Thank you for your patience for over the past 2 weeks with my business travel and getting back into the swing of things with making these videos every Wednesday. So today we're going to talk about bandwidth management. This is something that has been requested a few times from various people on YouTube and other places, and I feel there's a lot of misconceptions as to what it actually does for you. People feel it does things that it actually doesn't do. Bandwidth management is one of 3 bandwidth or quality management systems that are built into the SonicWALL that are supported by it. And so we're going to go through basically how those 3 play together, when you might want to use one over the other, and then how you would enable the various ones. But specifically we're going to focus mostly on bandwidth management, that one single feature in the SonicWALL here. So this is a feature that most people probably have stumbled upon when they are configuring their WAN interface and they see it refer to your bandwidth speed, and you think, hey, well, if SonicWALL knows about my bandwidth speed, then maybe it can do some fun things and help make my speeds faster. Yes and no. It doesn't really make things faster, but it can make your experience using your internet connection, if it's fully loaded, a bit nicer for various applications. So how you enable your bandwidth management is under network interfaces. You have to go under the WAN connections, the WAN interfaces that you have on your SonicWALL, and configure each one of those with the bandwidth speed. So we have one WAN interface on this NSA 220 from the live demo site. If you have 2 or 3 or 4, you're going to have to do this under each one of those. So we're going to go to our WAN and configure it, and go to the Advanced tab. And then at the bottom here we have bandwidth management with egress and ingress values. Normally this is disabled by default. I'm on the live demo site, so it has it enabled for us so we can play with the features. Normally this is off by default, and the bandwidth management section is relatively disabled. And if you go under your firewall rules and you edit a firewall rule, there will be a tab missing for bandwidth management, unless they've updated that in the last version, but that's the way it's been working for the last few that I've checked. So how you go in and enable bandwidth management is you turn on these 2 checkboxes. So we're going to say we want to manage our egress, our outgoing bandwidth, as well as our ingress, our incoming bandwidth. And these values line up with what you would have for your download and upload speeds. So your egress would be outbound, would be your upload speed for your connection. Ingress would be your download speed for your connection. Notice how it wants to know the available interface bandwidth in kilobits per second. So for my upload speeds, how fast is my connection? This is something you might want to check at what plan you purchase from your ISP to find out what your theoretical limits are on your internet connection you're paying for. Or go to a site like speedtest.net, find out what it says you're getting, maybe round it up a little bit, and then put those values in here. It's up to you how you want to do that. But notice how it says kilobits per second. So if you have if you go and check with your ISP and they say you have a 10 megabit per second connection for download and 3 megabit per second connection for your upload, you'll have to convert that into kilobits. So if you convert it into kilobits, note that there are 1024 kilobits per megabit. So if you want to convert it properly, you should do it by increments of 1024 for the conversion. It's not just a straight 1000. Those of you familiar with computers probably already know that. But we're going to put that into thousands of kilobits to reference a megabit per second. So I'm not going to do the 1024 calculation because I'm just doing it off my top of my head here, but we're going to do 10,000 kilobits per second. There we go. So 10,000 kilobits per second would be 1 megabit, or 10 megabits per second. If we do that for our ingress, that was my upload speed, sorry, so that would be 3,000. And then my download speed, which would be my ingress, would be 10. There we go. So there's my upload speed, my egress, my outgoing, and then my ingress, my incoming, which would be my download speed. So there's 10 megabits by 3 megabits. Download by upload. So we go ahead, turn that on, put in those values, click OK, and then that allows us to go in and start configuring things for bandwidth management. You find the bandwidth management section under Firewall Settings, BWM. And here we have various priorities. Those of you who have poked around with DSCP or QoS, this looks somewhat familiar. And basically, bandwidth management is SonicWALL's version, if you want to call it that, of quality of service, of QoS. But it differs in the fact that it doesn't tag the data. So what it really does is packet shaping. It doesn't, and management of the available bandwidth, as it would be called, but it doesn't modify the packets in any way. Quality of service and DSCP in that they actually change your headers and input values that refer to the quality of the data that's being sent. Whereas here it doesn't do that. It's only for the SonicWALL's use. So the way this really differs is that if you have bandwidth management enabled, anything that we do and configure for bandwidth management is only going to be relative to this SonicWALL, to this device. If you go in and do quality of service or DSCP, that then becomes something that other devices can know about. So if you send a packet with VoIP traffic on it and you have bandwidth management turned on, it will go through the SonicWALL and be processed and sent along, and there will be no changes. The other devices down the line will not know that you want to have this with a higher priority. Whereas if you use DSCP or QoS, that would then have a value in its header that says, hey, this is a higher priority packet. Please process this according to your rules in your device. So it really depends on your network. If you have a relatively simple network, but you want to make sure you utilize your bandwidth properly and you don't want to pay for a faster connection from your ISP, you want to try and eke out every little bit of performance from your available bandwidth, then bandwidth management is the way to go. But if you have other devices down the line in your network that might want to modify how it does its routing or firewalling based on the quality of the traffic, then you might want to use a tagged system like QoS or DSCP. So that's where I feel a lot of people get confused, is bandwidth management is only for the SonicWALL, and it does not modify the data in any way, and it's only really useful if your internet connection, if your WAN connections are completely maxed. So you can see here on this page we have various priorities, and 3 of them are enabled by default really. You can see high, medium, and low have values entered in by default for our guaranteed percentage. So what this does is it says any traffic that is internally tagged or categorized, we should say categorized because tagged makes you think it's QoS, but any traffic that is categorized as high, medium, or low based on the firewall rule it passed through gets a guaranteed percentage of the available bandwidth that we've now configured in our WAN connection. So under our WAN interface, anything that has a low priority will be a guaranteed 20% of that 10 megabit per second download speed, for example, or that 3 megabit per second upload speed, depending on what direction the traffic's flowing. But then it also bursts up to a maximum of 100. So if the internet connection is not being 100% used, well then low priority traffic is allowed to use all of it, unless other traffic with other priorities are using up some of their guaranteed percentages, and then it will use its guaranteed percentage and then up to the maximum of that it can. So it works kind of like it works essentially like QoS without tagging. So this is all well and good, and you can go ahead and you can use other priorities if you want. You just have to put other values in here and then make sure it totals up to 100. You can see I made highest priority have a guaranteed bandwidth amount of 10% of our ingress or egress, depending on the rule. And now it said, oh hey, we're adding up to 110%, so you got to tweak that. So got to drop that down to 40 maybe, and I have to play with the numbers to make it equal 100%. So if I wanted to change this, I can. I'd go ahead and click accept. Bandwidth management type is WAN or global. WAN is WAN only. Global allows you to do it throughout other interfaces. So global is default, so you have the greatest flexibility. So how do we go and actually do something useful with this now? So if we leave this all as default, and we'd only want to have high, medium, low for now because we don't really know what we want to classify yet, how do we go and actually do something useful with it? Now it might seem odd, but you actually do it underneath your firewall access rules. So underneath firewall access rules, think of it more of like those of you who are familiar with Cisco devices, you end up creating access lists which match traffic based on those entries in your access lists. So similarly in SonicWALL they now do the same thing. So what you do is you create allow access rules which then match some sort of traffic based on what you have here, and then we do something with it within the configuration of that rule. So we're not actually blocking it, there's no other weird action we have to set for it. We just allow it, make sure that it's very specific to the type of traffic that we want, the source, the destination, the ports used. You can even do the application used in the fancier SonicWALLs. You can do, like with application filtering, you can do bandwidth management based on the application being utilized, if you wish. Or you can just do it based on port or source or destination IP or protocol use, or something like that. So what we do is, let's say we want to, let's take a look at our rules here. Let's say we want to modify the bandwidth management of our HTTPS management traffic. So here's our WAN to WAN HTTPS management. So that's me accessing this this interface right here. It matches it as an allow. So any traffic coming into our X1 interface using HTTPS to get to the management interface is allowed. And now since it matches that, and we have, you can see packets going back and forth and matching on this rule, it's actually being utilized and noticed by the SonicWALL and being used. Go in and configure that. You'll notice that we have a new tab. So if you have not had bandwidth management enabled before, sorry about that, this thing's being a little finicky today. If you did not have bandwidth management enabled before, you'll notice that now we have a new tab, Ethernet BWN. For our Ethernet bandwidth management. Normally you only have the 3 tabs for general, advanced, and QoS. So if we go take a look at bandwidth management, and of course I chose a poor one, let me choose a different one. Here, we'll just do multicast. Let's say we want to mess with multicast. There we go. We go to Ethernet BWM tab, and then we can modify the priority of the bandwidth, either inbound or outbound, for this rule, and then give it one of those priorities that we had on that other area underneath firewall settings BWM. So now I can say the priority of my LAN to my multicast LAN traffic outbound is going to have a medium priority, and inbound it's going to have a low priority. And then those refer to the percentage values that we have configured underneath the firewall settings BWM area. So if I chose something that was not configured, like highest, we don't really have anything in there, it really doesn't do anything useful for us. We have to use that that guaranteed percentage value, else we're not really doing anything with this. So make sure you choose a bandwidth priority level which is actually configured with some sort of values under your firewall settings BWM area. So what let's say we want to do this, we'd say OK, save it, and then any traffic that matches this rule would then be filtered, would then be shaped the traffic would be shaped appropriately once the WAN interface breaches 100% utilization based on the bandwidth values that you've entered into the SonicWALL. Now, alternatively, you also have quality of service. So, again, all this bandwidth management stuff is only based on the SonicWALL by itself. It doesn't talk to the other devices on your network by changing the header and putting in a QoS value. So in order to do actual QoS and tagging the packet differently, either on layer 2 or layer 3, or doing DSCP, depending on how you want to do things, you go into the QoS tab instead, and then you can choose to use either DSCP or normal QoS 802.1p. And then you can set it to either map, where it will then refer to the mappings you have configured in the other section under Firewall Settings QoS, or you can explicitly say this traffic has the following value. So it's this is multicast, so maybe I want to call it spare traffic, so it gets a low value, so that the routers down the line that receive this traffic know that it's not really all that much of a priority, or maybe this is really important video multicast, and we have some sort of video streaming server in here, so let's set it to 5 for video. So then other routers down the line, maybe the SonicWALL is in the middle between two buildings, and I'm filtering traffic and firewalling between the two buildings for internal security reasons, but it's still part of an overall network that it's within. It's not actually a gateway device. Here's where I might want to use QoS with tagging. So I could tag the traffic that's multicast as video, and then say, okay, the Cisco router down the line might read that and then say, okay, I'm going to route that appropriately. And also you can do the same thing with DSCP. If you choose DSCP, you can use the different classes available in DSCP. And then also, there we go. And then also, like I mentioned, under the application firewall, which I haven't gone over yet, but if you have a fancier SonicWALL, like a higher level NSA model, or I believe it's like the TZ210 and up, something like that, they have the application firewall ability. You can actually do bandwidth management actions based on the applications that you're filtering within your application rules. So we can say it has the following traffic for like an SMTP client is, I'm sorry, I don't have anything set up in here, but you could then match it to specific traffic for, Skype or, some other application being run, FTP with a specific parameter in it, YouTube streaming or something like that, and then provide it with a specific bandwidth management value so that the SonicWALL can filter and shape the traffic properly based on applications. So that's an option as well. I'll have to do an application firewalling video with a non-demo SonicWALL so I can go in and actually add some values in there. And that's pretty much it for bandwidth management. It's basically just a way of providing percentages. I'll go under that area again. Providing percentages of guaranteed bandwidth based on what you configured under the interface area, your WAN interface, to different types of traffic that you match under your firewall access rules. And then based on what priorities you assign that traffic, you get a certain percentage guaranteed to that traffic. So that way you can prioritize your VoIP or video traffic over top of standard HTTP web browsing or some other purpose, some custom application or something like that. So that's pretty much it. And again, also remember, if you are needing it to tell other devices or pass on the information that the following traffic is needed to be routed or shaped in a specific way, you're going to want to do a tagging method instead, which would be 802.1p QoS or DSCP. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you like the information I provided, go check out andrewcrouthamel.com, which is my blog where I post other networking and security information, and ShrikeTools.com, which is a managed security service for small and medium businesses. And I will see you next week. Thank you for watching.